The hum of the engines echoed softly through the shuttle's narrow cabin. Ethan Wells leaned forward in his seat, studying the repair console that blinked in front of him. He had been working in space for years, but even now, the silence of the void always felt both calming and heavy. The repair station orbiting the frontier world of Icarus 9 was his current home, a lonely outpost where humans rarely visited unless something broke. Ethan was used to being alone. As a young engineer, he didn't crave adventure the way others did. He was practical, careful, and patient, traits that made him one of the best repair technicians in the fleet. On that particular day, he had been assigned a simple task: take his shuttle out to recalibrate a communications array that had stopped transmitting signals. Just a few adjustments, he muttered to himself, tightening his harness as the shuttle drifted closer to the array. In and out, no trouble. No, but the universe had other plans. As he activated the repair drones, a strange ripple passed through the shuttle. The lights flickered, and the console displayed unfamiliar readings. Ethan frowned, tapping the side of the screen. That doesn't look right. Before he could react, the shuttle lurched violently. The stars outside stretched and twisted as if the very fabric of space was bending. Ethan's stomach dropped. He slammed his hands on the controls, trying to stabilize the craft, but the force pulled him deeper into the distortion. "Gravitational anomaly," he shouted, though no one was around to hear. The shuttle spun, alarms blaring, as it was dragged into the strange rift. Darkness swallowed the craft, and for a few terrifying seconds, Ethan thought he had been ripped apart by space itself. Then, just as suddenly, the shuttle burst into light again. Except this light came from a blue sky. His eyes widened. That's not space. The shuttle was plummeting. Clouds whipped past the windows and a green surface loomed below. He yanked at the controls, fighting to keep the shuttle from breaking apart. It roared across the sky, leaving smoke and fire, trailing behind. At the last second, Ethan guided the ship toward a marshy stretch of land. The shuttle slammed into the ground, bouncing, sliding, and finally skidding to a halt against a bank of strange crystalline trees. Ethan's chest heaved as he sat in the smoking wreckage. His hands shook, but he was alive. He unbuckled himself, coughing from the smoke. Outside, the world looked alien. Towering trees shimmered with translucent bark, and flowers the size of his torso glowed faintly in the shadows. Strange creatures darted through the underbrush, their scales glittering like gems. "This isn't on any star map I've ever seen," Ethan whispered. Grabbing his emergency pack, he climbed out of the wreckage. The air was breathable, though it carried a faint metallic taste. He adjusted the strap of his pack and cautiously stepped into the forest. Minutes turned into hours as he tried to find his bearings. He had no way of knowing where he was or if he could contact the repair station. His communicator only spat static. His only option was to keep moving. As he pushed through the dense foliage, he heard a sound that froze him in place. Voices. Not human ones. Ethan crouched low, moving carefully through the bushes until he saw a clearing ahead. A group of tall figures clad in armor stood around someone. No, not just someone, but a young woman dressed in flowing silver garments. Her skin glowed faintly under the strange light, her eyes a deep violet that seemed to reflect the world around her. Her head bore a delicate crown of crystal, but she was in trouble. The armored figures had surrounded her, their weapons drawn. They weren't speaking in any language Ethan knew, but their intent was clear. "Looks like a hostage situation," he muttered, his heart racing. Logic told him to stay hidden. He was alone, unarmed, and on a world he didn't understand. But the sight of the woman's frightened expression stirred something in him. He couldn't just walk away. He looked down at his pack. Inside was a flare gun, a tool, not a weapon. Still, it was better than nothing. Taking a deep breath, he crept closer to the clearing. One of the armored men raised his blade at the woman. She stood tall despite her fear, her voice steady as she spoke words Ethan couldn't understand. The man sneered and moved closer. That was when Ethan acted. He stepped into the open, aimed the flare gun at the ground near the armored figures, and fired. The flare exploded in a burst of blinding red light and smoke. The alien staggered back, shouting in surprise. "Hey!" Ethan yelled, waving his arms. "Leave her alone!" The woman's eyes widened when she saw him. The armored figures turned, glaring at this strange intruder. Ethan's heart pounded as they raised their weapons toward him. Bad idea, he whispered to himself, backing away slowly. But his distraction worked. The woman seized the opportunity, pulling a hidden blade from her garments. With swift, practiced movements, she disarmed one attacker and knocked another to the ground. The others, startled by the sudden turn, retreated into the forest, vanishing into the shadows. Ethan lowered the flare gun, his chest heaving. He hadn't exactly fought them off, but he had bought her enough time to fight back. The woman turned to him, her violet eyes locking onto his. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then she approached, her steps graceful, yet strong. "You," she said slowly, her words carrying a faint accent, but in perfect English. "You are human." Ethan blinked. "You speak English?" Her lips curved into the faintest smile. "I have studied many tongues, but never did I expect to meet a living human here." Ethan shifted awkwardly, lowering the flare gun. "Yeah, well, I didn't expect to meet, well, you. Thanks for not letting them turn me into a pile of ash." She tilted her head, her expression curious. "You are brave. Foolish, but brave." Ethan chuckled nervously. "Story of my life." She studied him for a moment before placing a hand on her chest. "I am Princess Lysra of the Zerelians." She said it with pride, as though the name itself carried the weight of stars. Ethan blinked again. "Princess? As in actual royalty?" "Yes." Her eyes softened. "And you are?" "Ethan. Ethan Wells. Just a repair technician." "A simple title," she said, though her tone suggested she found it interesting. "Yet you stepped into danger without hesitation. That is rare, even among warriors." Ethan shrugged, trying to downplay the fear still racing through his veins. "Couldn't just stand by and watch. That's not how humans do things." Her eyes sparkled faintly. "Humans," she whispered as though testing the word. Before he could ask more, a distant horn sounded through the forest. Lysra's face hardened. "We cannot stay. They will return." "Where exactly are we going?" Ethan asked. "To safety," she replied. "And perhaps to destiny." Without another word, she took his hand and pulled him toward the deeper forest. Ethan stumbled at first, surprised by her strength, but he followed. He had no idea where he was or what dangers lay ahead, but something told him his life had just changed forever. For the first time in years, Ethan Wells felt he was no longer drifting through life. He was running headfirst into an adventure far greater than any he could have imagined. Ethan had never run through a forest quite like this one. The air shimmered faintly, glowing plants lighting the way as if stars had fallen to the ground. Princess Lysra moved quickly, her silver robes flowing behind her as she guided him deeper into the strange world. Ethan tried to keep up, but his boots sank slightly into the mossy ground and roots seemed determined to trip him at every step. "Where exactly are we going?" Ethan asked between breaths. "To the palace," Lysra answered without slowing down. Her voice was calm, steady, though her eyes darted toward the trees as if expecting enemies. "It is the only place I can guarantee your safety." Ethan nearly stumbled. "The palace? As in a royal palace? Like with guards and kings, and crowns?" "Empress," Lysra corrected softly. "My mother. She rules the Zerelians." Ethan's heart sank. He imagined stepping into some grand hall filled with armored soldiers glaring at him like he was an insect. He wasn't exactly dressed like a hero. His jumpsuit was still scorched from the shuttle crash, and dirt streaked across his face. "Yeah, I'm sure that'll go over great." Human stranger wanders into the alien queen's living room. Can't see how that could possibly be a bad idea. Lysra glanced at him, a small smile tugging at her lips despite the danger. "You are alive because you are quick of tongue as well as quick of action. Perhaps it will help you." The sound of horns echoed again through the forest, closer this time. Ethan's stomach twisted. "I'm guessing those aren't the friendly kind of horns." "No," she said firmly. "We must hurry." They pushed onward until the trees thinned. Ahead, the land rose into cliffs of crystal rock that glowed faintly under the pale moonlight. Atop the cliff stood a structure so vast and shining that Ethan stopped in awe. Towers carved from crystal spiraled into the sky. Bridges arched gracefully across gardens that sparkled with light, and banners fluttered high above, each marked with an elegant sigil he could not read. The palace was alive with energy, humming, softly as though it breathed with the land itself. "Whoa," Ethan whispered. "That's not just a palace. That's like something out of a dream." Lysera straightened proudly. "The heart of the Xyrelians, the Palace of Shadows, home to my family for 1,000 generations." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Palace of Shadows? Doesn't sound all that welcoming." "It is named for what it represents," Lysera explained, as they approached a hidden side path leading up toward the gates. "A place where secrets live, where light and darkness share the same roof." "That sounds even less welcoming," Ethan muttered, but he followed anyway. They reached a narrow entrance guarded by 2 towering figures. Their armor shimmered like polished obsidian, and their helmets hid their faces. When Lysera approached, the guards bowed deeply, then froze as their gaze shifted to Ethan. Their hands moved to their weapons. Lysera raised a hand quickly. "He is with me. Stand down." The guards hesitated, their unreadable eyes fixed on Ethan, then slowly lowered their weapons. Without a word, they opened the gate. Ethan leaned close to Lysera as they stepped inside. "So, just to be clear, this isn't like against the rules or anything, right? Bringing a random human into your secret palace?" Lysera didn't answer immediately. Her silence was not comforting. Inside, the palace was even more overwhelming. Tall arches stretched high above, lined with glowing crystals that pulsed with soft light. The floors were polished to a mirror-like sheen, and tapestries depicting ancient battles and regal figures hung across the walls. Music drifted faintly from somewhere deeper within, blending with the whisper of fountains and the rustle of distant footsteps. Ethan couldn't stop staring. Everything was elegant, precise, and clearly ancient. Yet he could feel the weight of judgment pressing down on him. Servants and nobles passed through the halls, their expressions shifting to shock when they noticed him. Some whispered behind their hands. Others frowned openly, their eyes filled with disdain. Ethan muttered, tugging at his scorched jumpsuit. "I'm getting the feeling I'm not exactly blending in." "They have never seen a human before," Lysera said softly. "To them, you are unexpected." "Yeah, unexpected, that's one word for it." They entered a vast chamber filled with a long crystal table where nobles in shimmering robes were gathered. Conversation died instantly when Ethan stepped through the doorway. Every eye locked on him, and the silence grew heavy. At the head of the chamber sat a woman who radiated authority. Her robes were layered with gems that shimmered like stars, and her crown seemed carved from pure light. Her gaze was sharp, commanding, and filled with the weight of centuries. Ethan didn't need an introduction to know who she was. The Empress, Lysera's mother. The Empress rose slowly, her eyes narrowing on Ethan. "What?" she said in a voice like thunder wrapped in silk. "Is this?" Lysera stepped forward quickly, bowing her head. "Mother, this is Ethan Wells, a human who saved my life." The Empress's gaze did not soften. "A human? Impossible. Their kind exists only in whispers of the old wars. They are weak, fragile." Ethan's jaw tightened. "I'm standing right here, you know." A murmur rippled through the nobles, shocked at his boldness. Lysera shot him a warning glance, but Ethan simply shrugged. He wasn't about to let himself be dismissed like some insect. The Empress studied him, her expression unreadable. "Why bring him here, Lysera? You know our laws. Outsiders are forbidden from the palace." "He is not just an outsider," Lysera insisted. "He acted with courage. He faced danger when he had no reason to. Without him, I would not be here." The Empress's eyes flicked between her daughter and the human. For a long moment, the chamber was silent except for the faint hum of the crystals. Finally, the Empress spoke. "Very well," she said coldly. "He may remain for now. But know this, human, you are no guest here. You are a question, and questions demand answers." Ethan exhaled slowly, trying to mask his nerves. Fair enough, just don't expect me to have all the answers. I'm more of a questions kind of guy myself. A few nobles gasped at his casual tone. Lysera hid a smile. The Empress raised a hand. Take him to the Hall of Shadows. If he is to stay, he will be tested. Ethan was escorted through winding corridors into a chamber dimly lit by floating crystals. The walls were etched with symbols that seemed to shift when he wasn't looking directly at them. This, a guard said in a deep voice, is where outsiders are judged. Ethan frowned. Yeah, that sounds like a fun place to hang out. Left, alone in the strange room, Ethan paced. He felt the weight of 1,000 unseen eyes. He wasn't sure if it was the walls playing tricks on him or if the palace itself was alive somehow. Then suddenly, Lysera appeared in the doorway. You should not have spoken so boldly to my mother, she whispered, her tone both scolding and amused. Sorry, Ethan said, rubbing the back of his neck, but I don't exactly do well with being called weak. Kinda hits the pride, you know. Lysera tilted her head, studying him with those violet eyes. You are different. Most who stand before her bow, obey, and tremble. But you resist. Not sure if that's bravery or just stupidity, Ethan admitted. Perhaps both, Lysera said softly. They stood in silence for a moment before she added, the court will not accept you easily. They see you as a disruption. They will try to use you against me. Against you? Ethan frowned. Why? You're a princess. Don't they all, listen to you? Lysera's gaze hardened. Power here is not simple. Every word, every gesture is weighed. By bringing you here, I have defied expectation. Some will seek to use that against me. Others will whisper that I am unfit to lead. Ethan felt a pang of guilt. I didn't mean to cause trouble. I just didn't want to watch you get hurt. Her eyes softened again. And that is why you are different. You act from the heart, not from strategy. That is rare. Ethan scratched his head. Well, I'm glad it counts for something. Before Lysera could reply, a loud gong echoed through the palace. A voice boomed, announcing, the human will face the trials of honor. Ethan blinked. Wait, the what now? Lysera's expression turned serious. The trials, tests that prove worth or expose weakness. If you fail, they will use it as proof that you are unfit to remain here. Worse, they may demand your exile or your death. Ethan groaned. Of course, because nothing's ever simple. Lysera stepped closer, her voice low but filled with determination. But if you succeed, you will not only survive, you will change how they see you and perhaps how they see me. Ethan looked at her, then at the strange chamber around him. His stomach churned, but he nodded. All right. Guess I better not fail then. Lysera gave him a faint smile. You may be human, Ethan Wells, but tonight you stand in the heart of an empire, and empires do not forget the ones who defy them. Ethan exhaled slowly, preparing himself. The trials awaited, and somewhere deep inside he knew this was only the beginning. The next morning came too quickly for Ethan Wells. He had barely slept in the small chamber the guards had assigned him. The walls of the palace seemed alive, glowing faintly even in the dark. Every sound carried, whispers in the corridors, footsteps echoing down endless halls, the soft hum of the crystals. It felt less like a home and more like a place designed to remind you that you were being watched. When the heavy doors creaked open, Ethan sat up straight. A pair of armored guards stepped inside, their tall figures moving with military precision. It is time, one said flatly. Ethan pulled on his boots and muttered, Yeah, time for me to humiliate myself in front of an alien empire. No pressure at all. The guards ignored his words and led him through twisting corridors until they reached a massive chamber. The doors opened, and Ethan's eyes widened. The trial hall was enormous, shaped like a circular arena. Thousands of Xerilians filled the balconies above, their robes shimmering like starlight. Murmurs ran through the crowd as they leaned forward to see the human. At the far end of the arena sat the Empress on a raised throne, her gaze sharp and unyielding. Beside her stood Princess Lysera, her violet eyes watching Ethan closely. Unlike the rest, she didn't look at him with doubt. She looked at him with quiet faith. Ethan swallowed hard. Well, here goes nothing. A voice boomed across the chamber, amplified by unseen energy. Ethan Wells of Earth, you stand before the Xyrelians as an uninvited guest. To prove whether you are worthy to walk among us, you must face the trials of fire and honor. Only those who succeed earn the right to remain. Do you accept? Ethan glanced at Lizera. She gave the slightest nod, urging him forward. He straightened his shoulders. Yeah, I accept. The crowd erupted in murmurs again, some amused, some skeptical, others curious. The first trial began, with the lowering of a heavy gate. From it came a series of platforms rising from a pool of glowing liquid. The platforms floated and shifted constantly, moving apart and slamming together like puzzle pieces. This, the announcer declared, is the trial of balance. Cross the path of fire and reach the other side. Ethan stared at the shifting platforms. The glowing liquid hissed and bubbled below. He wasn't sure what it was, but he knew falling into it wasn't on his to-do list. Great, he muttered. A game of alien hopscotch. I was always terrible at gym class. He took a deep breath and leapt onto the first platform. It wobbled under his weight, nearly throwing him off. The crowd gasped, expecting him to fall immediately. Ethan flailed his arms, managing to steady himself. Okay, Wells, he told himself. One step at a time. Don't look down. Don't think about the boiling alien soup. He jumped to the next platform, then the next. Each one shifted unpredictably. The Xyrelians watching began to murmur again, some laughing, others impressed by his persistence. Halfway across, one platform tilted sharply. Ethan slipped, his foot dangling over the glowing pool. The heat singed his skin, and panic surged. But instead of freezing, he remembered something from his repair work. Never fight the machine, move with it. He let the platform tilt fully, then used the momentum to launch himself to the next one. The crowd gasped again, this time louder. Finally, with one last desperate jump, Ethan landed on the far side. He stumbled, nearly fell, then caught himself. A loud gong rang. The announcer declared, "The human has passed the first trial." Cheers and groans mixed from the balconies. Ethan bent over, hands on his knees, panting. One down. How many left before I regret agreeing to this? The second trial began almost immediately. The floor of the arena shifted, opening to reveal a massive pit. From the shadows below, strange creatures crawled out, four-legged beasts with armored hides and glowing eyes. They snarled, their teeth like jagged blades. The trial of strength, the announcer declared. Survive the beasts. Ethan's eyes widened. Survive? That's the whole instruction? Not defeat? Just survive? The beasts circled him, growling. Ethan looked around desperately. He had no weapons, no armor, just his wits. One beast lunged. Ethan dove out of the way, rolling across the floor. The crowd shouted in excitement. Another beast charged, and Ethan grabbed a loose chain lying in the pit, swinging it wildly. It clanged against the beast's armored hide, not hurting it but distracting it. Okay, so brute force isn't the answer, Ethan muttered. Think, Wells, think. He noticed the creatures move together almost like a pack. When one lunged, the others followed. That meant predictability, and predictability meant opportunity. He positioned himself near one of the stone pillars in the pit. When the largest beast charged, Ethan dodged at the last second. The beast slammed into the pillar, stunning itself. The others piled in, confused and snarling. Ethan grabbed a handful of dust and flung it at their glowing eyes. The creatures roared, blinded for just long enough for the gong to sound. The human has passed the second trial. The crowd roared in surprise. Some nobles leaned forward, clearly intrigued. Others scowled, unhappy that the human was proving harder to break than expected. Ethan leaned against the pillar, chest heaving. 2 down. If there's a third one, I swear it better not involve lava or wild animals. Of course, the third trial was worse. The arena floor shifted again, revealing a tall structure of walls and towers. The announcer's voice echoed, "The trial of wisdom. Find your way through the shifting labyrinth. The path is never the same." The walls rearranged themselves, creating a constantly moving maze. Ethan stared at it in disbelief. Great. An alien funhouse, just what I needed. He entered the maze cautiously. The walls glowed faintly and the air buzzed with strange energy. Every time he chose a direction, the path behind him sealed shut. Okay, Wells. Think like an engineer. Machines follow rules. There has to be a pattern. He studied the walls as they shifted, noticing that certain symbols lit up before the walls moved. A triangle symbol meant the wall would slide left. A circle meant it would rise. Slowly, he began to predict the changes. The crowd watched in silence as the human moved through the maze with growing confidence. At one point, he even smirked. Knew it. Circle means up, triangle means left. Guess even alien puzzles can't beat basic pattern recognition. Finally, he emerged from the labyrinth, sweaty but grinning. The gong rang once more. The human has passed the third trial. This time the cheers were louder than the groans. Even some of the nobles who doubted him were forced to clap politely. But the trials were not over. The announcer's voice boomed again. The final test, the trial of spirit. The arena fell silent. Ethan looked up nervously. What exactly does that mean? The floor shifted once more, and suddenly Ethan found himself standing in a dark void. The palace, the crowd, everything vanished. He was alone in endless blackness. "Hello?" he called. His voice echoed strangely, then shapes formed around him. His old repair station, the shuttle he had crashed, the faces of the few friends he had left behind, and then Lizara standing before him, her violet eyes filled with fear. "You cannot protect her," a voice whispered all around him. "You are weak, fragile. She will suffer because of you." Ethan clenched his fists. No, that's not true. The illusions grew harsher. Lizara in chains, his home destroyed, his life wasted. The voice pressed harder. "You do not belong. You are nothing." Ethan closed his eyes, breathing hard. For a moment doubt clawed at him. But then he remembered the forest, the moment he had seen Lizara surrounded, and how he had acted without hesitation. He remembered the balance trial, the beasts, the maze. He remembered her faith in him when no one else believed. He raised his head. "I may not be the strongest, I may not be the smartest, but I don't give up, and I'll protect her no matter what it takes." The darkness shattered like glass. Ethan collapsed onto the arena floor, gasping. The gong rang for the final. "Tysur, the human has passed the trial of spirit." The crowd exploded in noise, cheers, gasps, even angry shouts. The Empress's gaze was sharp as ever, but for the first time she looked thoughtful. Lizara's eyes glistened with pride, her lips curving into a smile. Ethan staggered to his feet, raising one arm weakly. "So, do I get a medal or at least a glass of water?" The crowd laughed, not cruelly this time, but with genuine amusement. For the first time since his arrival, Ethan felt like maybe, just maybe, he wasn't completely unwelcome here. But deep down he knew this was only the start of something far bigger. The arena was still buzzing with voices when the trials ended. Nobles whispered to each other, some with disbelief, others with reluctant admiration. The sight of a human passing all 4 trials was something none of them had expected. Ethan Wells stood at the center of the arena, sweat dripping from his forehead, his chest still rising and falling from exhaustion. His jumpsuit was torn in several places, and his hands were scraped raw. But despite all of that, he was smiling faintly, almost as if he had been on some strange adventure rather than a life-or-death test. From her throne, the Empress rose slowly. The entire crowd fell silent at once. Her voice carried across the chamber like a sharp blade cutting through the air. "The human has completed the trials of fire and honor. Against all expectation, he stands unbroken." A wave of murmurs rolled through the balconies. Some nobles clapped politely, others turned, their faces away in disapproval. The Empress lifted her hand, silencing the room. Her eyes narrowed on Ethan. And yet, the question remains, what is to be done with him? Ethan's small smile faded. He shifted uneasily. Done with me? That doesn't sound like a question with many good answers." The Empress ignored him, speaking to the gathered court. "He is an outsider, a human, a race thought long gone from this galaxy. By law, he should not be here. And yet my daughter has brought him to our palace, has defended him, and has tied his fate to ours. What do you say, nobles of Xyrelia?" Should he be cast out, or should he remain? The chamber erupted. Nobles argued loudly, their voices clashing like thunder. Exile him. He is dangerous, one shouted. He passed the trials. That is more than many of our own could do, another countered. He is weak, a trickster who used chance and luck. He showed spirit. That cannot be denied. Ethan stood awkwardly, raising a hand. Hey, if it helps, I vote for the option where nobody exiles me, just throwing that out there. The crowd ignored him. Lysera stepped forward, her violet eyes blazing with determination. Enough. Her voice cut through the chaos like lightning. All eyes turned to her. She looked directly at her mother. He is no threat. He is brave, clever, and willing to risk his life for others. I would not be standing here if not for him. And more than that. She paused, her voice steady but filled with emotion. He is the one I have chosen. The chamber fell silent, again this time so silent that even Ethan could hear his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. He blinked. Wait, chosen? As in, me? Chosen for what? Lysera lifted her chin proudly. Chosen as my future husband. Gasps exploded from every balcony. Nobles leaned forward, shouting in disbelief. Some clutched their robes as if the very air had been poisoned. Ethan froze in place, his mouth opening and closing without sound. Excuse me, Princess, but did you just— Yes, she said firmly, her eyes never leaving her mother. I claim him as mine. The Empress's face hardened, her hands tightening on the arms of her throne. Lysera, do you realize what you are saying? Do you realize the shame this will bring to our line? There is no shame in truth, Lysera replied boldly. And the truth is this. I love him. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. He could hardly believe what he was hearing. He had saved her, yes. They had shared moments of understanding. But love? Already? His mind scrambled to catch up, yet when he looked at her face, strong, fierce, and filled with unshakable belief, he felt something stir inside him too. The Empress rose to her full height, her presence filling the arena like a storm. You would defy me, your mother and Empress, for this human? Lysera did not flinch. She stepped forward, placing herself directly in front of Ethan as the guards moved closer. Her arms spread wide, shielding him. Don't hurt him, she cried, her voice echoing across the chamber. That's my future husband you're messing with. The words struck the court like thunder. Some nobles gasped in outrage, others whispered frantically, while a few even looked impressed at her courage. Ethan, meanwhile, blinked rapidly. Future husband? Princess, I think I missed a step in this whole process. Lysera glanced at him, briefly, her expression softer. You did not miss a step. You simply do not yet understand the path. The Empress's voice was low, but it carried danger. Lysera, step aside, this is your final warning. No, Lysera said firmly. If you wish to strike him, you will strike me first. The guards hesitated. No one dared touch the princess. The Empress's gaze was like fire. For a long moment she said nothing, only staring at her daughter and the human behind her. Finally she turned to the nobles. You see what this outsider has done? He has infected her mind. He has turned her against her own blood. Against her own empire. That's not true, Ethan said quickly, stepping forward despite Lysera's attempt to hold him back. His voice was nervous but steady. She's not against you. She's just standing for what she believes in. That's not weakness. That's strength. The Empress's eyes narrowed on him. You dare speak to me, human? Ethan's throat went dry, but he forced himself to meet her gaze. Yeah, because I think you're wrong about me. I didn't come here to cause trouble. I didn't even come here by choice. But ever since I landed, all I've done is try to survive, try to prove I'm not useless, and try to make sure she's safe. If that makes me dangerous, then maybe dangerous is what you need. The chamber grew quiet again. Ethan could feel thousands of eyes on him, but he pressed on. Back where I come from, we humans don't have crystal palaces or glowing crowns. But we've got something just as strong. We don't quit. We get back up when we fall. That's What I did in the trials, and that's what I'll keep doing if you let me stay. I'm not asking for a throne or power or anything fancy. I just want a chance. For the first time, the Empress's gaze softened slightly, but only slightly. You speak boldly for one so fragile, she said at last. Perhaps too boldly, she turned to the court. The human has shown spirit, but spirit alone does not make one fit for our empire. I will not allow my daughter's heart to blind her to the danger he represents. Therefore I decree this. The human shall remain for now, but his presence will be bound by my command. He will serve this empire, he will face its enemies, and if he fails, his life is forfeit. The nobles erupted in approval. Some still grumbled, but the Empress's decree was final. Lysera turned sharply. Mother! Silence, the Empress snapped. I will not hear more. If you insist on this bond, then let him prove himself not with words, but with deeds. Let him stand not as your chosen, but as a servant of Zerelia. Only then will I decide his fate. Ethan swallowed hard. Well, that sounds like the toughest job interview of my life. Lysera grasped his hand, her eyes fierce. Do not fear. You are stronger than they know. You will endure. The Empress's eyes caught the gesture, and her lips pressed into a thin line. Take them away. The human will be prepared for service. Later, as they were escorted through the palace corridors, Ethan whispered to Lysera, So, I'm guessing proposing to you in front of your entire empire isn't an option right now. Lysera chuckled softly, despite the tension. You already stood by me when no one else would. That is worth more than 1,000 proposals. Ethan managed a small smile. Well, for what it's worth, I don't think I'd trade this adventure for anything, even if your mom does terrify me. Lysera's hand tightened around his. Then hold fast, Ethan Wells, for this is only the beginning. The true test has yet to come. And as the palace doors closed behind them, Ethan realized she was right. The trials had proven his spirit, but the Empress's decree had set him on a far greater path. A path where his survival and his bond with Lysera would decide not just his fate, but the fate of an empire. The days following the Empress's decree were tense. Ethan Wells found himself under constant scrutiny, escorted wherever he went by palace guards who watched his every movement. He was no longer merely a visitor. He had been thrust into a world of rules, traditions, and expectations he could barely understand. And yet, through it all, Princess Lysera remained his anchor. She guided him through the palace corridors, explained customs, and offered quiet reassurance when the nobles' whispers and stares became overwhelming. You're handling this better than most would, she said one afternoon as they walked through the palace gardens. The crystal flowers glimmered softly around them, creating an ethereal glow. Ethan adjusted his jumpsuit, still scuffed from the trials. I'm mostly just trying not to embarrass you, or myself. And if I do, I'm hoping humor will cover the rest. Lysera laughed, the sound warm and genuine. You do have a way of surviving through sheer determination and luck. Luck? Ethan grinned. I prefer to call it human ingenuity. Works every time. Mostly. Her violet eyes softened. You have already done more for this empire than many warriors twice your size. Ethan's smile faded slightly. I just want to survive the next test, whatever it is. I have no idea what your mother will throw at me next. Lysera gave a small secretive smile. Perhaps, but you have proven yourself already. And soon everyone will see that you are more than a mere human. The test came sooner than Ethan expected. A distant alarm echoed through the palace one evening, the low vibration setting everyone on edge. Guards rushed past, shouting orders. Lysera's hand found Ethan's, pulling him toward a balcony overlooking the palace gates. An enemy fleet was approaching, a fleet of sleek, black ships that had not been seen in decades. The Empress's advisors panicked. Her generals bickered over tactics. Even some of the strongest warriors looked uncertain. Ethan felt the weight of the moment settle on him. The palace had judged him. The trials had tested him. And now, the survival of the empire itself rested on their ability to respond. Lysera's hand squeezed his. You can do this, I know you can. Ethan swallowed hard. Me? I'm just me. I don't know anything about alien fleets. You know strategy. You know how to think when others panic. That is enough. The Empress's voice thundered from the balcony above. Ethan Wells, you will offer your counsel. If your advice fails, the consequences will be yours alone. Ethan nodded. All right, let's see what we've got. He studied the holographic display the generals had set up, showing the enemy fleet's movements. Their ships were fast and heavily armed, far more so than the Empire's frontline fleet. Conventional tactics, direct engagement, would be suicide. He took a deep breath. Okay, we need to divide their attention. Use smaller, faster ships to distract them. Set traps near the asteroid fields. Force them into narrow passages where their numbers won't matter. And we can use the palace shields to protect civilians while the fleet executes the maneuver. The generals exchanged uncertain glances. One finally spoke. You suggest splitting the fleet? Yes, Ethan said firmly. Smaller units can outmaneuver them. Concentrate on defense, then counterattack when they are off balance. Lizara's eyes glimmered with hope. You see? I told you. You can do this. The Empress's gaze bore into him. Human. If this fails, it will be on your head. Ethan straightened. Then let's make sure it doesn't fail. The battle began. Ethan's strategy was unconventional, even risky. Small squads darted in and out of the black ships, drawing their fire and confusing the enemy. The palace shields glowed as they held off the initial assault, protecting thousands of civilians. Ethan watched from the command balcony, giving instructions, coordinating maneuvers, and predicting enemy movements. For hours, the battle raged. Ethan's mind raced, calculating, adapting, and improvising. And slowly the tide began to turn. The enemy fleet, caught off guard by the unorthodox strategy, began to falter. Their ships collided, their formations broke apart, and the Xerelians gained the upper hand. Finally, with a coordinated strike, the enemy flagship was disabled, and the rest of the fleet retreated into the void. The palace erupted in cheers. The generals bowed, some reluctantly, others with genuine admiration. The Empress's eyes softened, a rare moment of acknowledgement crossing her face. Lizara turned to Ethan, her eyes shining. You did it. You saved them all. Ethan shook, his head still catching his breath. We did it. You, the fleet, the shields. I just suggested some ideas. Your ideas made the difference, Lizara insisted. You saw what none of us could. That is why I believe in you. Ethan smiled faintly. I guess humans do have a way of surprising everyone. After the battle, the Empress summoned Ethan to the throne room. The hall was quiet, nobles standing silently as the human approached. You have done well, the Empress said finally, her tone measured. Your strategy saved not only the palace but the entire population of Xerelia. For that, I will grant you recognition. You may remain here. You will not only serve this empire, but you may also walk freely among its people. Ethan blinked. That's it? No further tests? No. Execution orders? The Empress's lips curved slightly, almost imperceptibly. You have proven that humanity possesses qualities worthy of our empire. Courage, creativity, and unyielding spirit. You're no longer merely an outsider. Lizara's hand found Ethan's and she squeezed it gently. See? I told you. You've changed everything. Ethan exhaled slowly, relief washing over him. I guess I did, but you know, this doesn't feel real yet. It is real, Lizara said softly. Because I am here, and I am not letting anyone take you from me. Ethan's gaze met hers. He realized that beyond the palace, beyond the trials, beyond the judgments, he had found something stronger than fear or doubt. He had found a connection that no law or custom could break. In the weeks that followed, Ethan adapted to palace life. He trained with the guards, learning alien tactics and traditions. He studied the Empire's technology, offering new insights that sometimes amazed even the most senior engineers. Every day, he grew more confident, not just in his ability to survive, but in his ability to make a real difference. The nobles, once skeptical, began to see him in a new light. Some continued to grumble, but others approached him with respect, seeking his advice and listening to his ideas. The Empress herself, while still stern, acknowledged his worth quietly, a small but significant change in her demeanor. And through it all, Lysera was always at his side. They shared quiet moments in the palace gardens, discussing ideas, laughing at human quirks, and planning for the future. Every victory, every challenge, every small triumph strengthened the bond between them. Ethan realized that he was no longer just a human lost in an alien world. He had become part of something greater, someone who could shape the future of an entire empire. And through that, he had found a home, a purpose, and a love he had never imagined. One evening, as the twin moons of Zerelia cast silver light across the crystal towers, Ethan stood with Lysera on the balcony. The palace below shimmered, peaceful and alive, the result of courage, determination, and belief. "You changed everything," Lysera whispered, leaning against him. "We changed everything," Ethan replied. "Together." She smiled, her violet eyes bright. "Then let us face whatever comes next together." Ethan nodded. He had faced the trials, survived the court, and helped save an empire. But most importantly, he had proven that even a human, one small, determined human, could make a difference in a galaxy filled with wonders. And for the first time in his life, Ethan Wells felt truly at home. The empire had changed because of him. The princess had chosen him. And together, they would shape the future, not as ruler and outsider, but as partners united by courage, heart, and hope. The stars outside the palace shimmered, distant and endless. And for the first time, Ethan looked up at them without fear, because he knew humanity had a place in the universe and he was living proof.